Okay, good morning, everybody. Today is January 10th. January 10th? Oh, no, January 9th, 2019. I'll just try to remember saying that so people could distinguish between all the teaching videos and everything. I really did not catch all the news this morning, so I'm very familiar with the news. And of course, last night, President Trump gave his argument for the shutdown of the government, things of that. And I didn't watch. I just saw like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. They gave like a Democratic response. The media. Let me do a few things on the media. Normally, if a president addresses a nation, and it's not, a campaign type of thing. You don't do, most people realize you don't have like Democratic response and all. Most people are familiar with the media manipulation. What I'd like to talk about for a minute, I'm uploading to one of the sites called BitChute, okay? Why BitChute? Or why all those others? Dailymotion, Flickr, and why all of that? A few years ago, as learning media, learning all this stuff that you see me do, I became interested just in some of the pioneers in independent broadcasting. This will be somewhat of social media. Maybe I'll make a note on Facebook and a few other things. And so just because I was looking at some of the pioneers who did some of that, right now I'm in Texas. This is really not my home. And Austin, Texas, one of the pioneers, was somebody that became real famous, infamous the last year. But it was Alex Jones from Infowars. And I was not familiar with his, media thing. But I just was researching. And I looked at the site just for that purpose, to see how they organize and all. And lo and behold, the last year, what happened with that particular broadcaster was a lot of the mainstream media begin actually putting mainstream media, like CNN organizations, things of that nature, actually had people on payroll that contacted advertisers and doing all these types of things. We have to shut these voices down. Now, I am not a fan of Alex Jones, and because I looked at some of those things, but let me give you two of the many reasons that they said he must be taken off the air. And eventually, Twitter, they were slow to remove everything, Alex Jones. And then, of course, Facebook, and then Vimeo. They jumped on the bandwagon, which is a paid video site that you can be on forever, pay, and then they say, oh, look, we have 1 billion colors for videos, and we delete everything after when we feel like. All right, two of the things that they said must be silenced. Mainstream media, when some went after Alex Jones to get him off these sites. One was he was a conspiracy theorist concerning the tragedy of 9/11. And any voices that questioned some of the official government narrative of 9/11 should be silenced. Now, this came from some in the mainstream media. The other reason that they wanted to silence him, now you'll notice, because I go to this one site I showed you that I'm uploading BitChute, somebody's uploading all of the Alex Jones shows on BitChute. They tried to completely silence him. They also began spamming his site, because I'll still go to the site, and sometimes some of my sites, as I'm doing all these things, I'm not Alex Jones, but I notice one site might be not working, but that's why we have so many. So the mainstream media put pressure for that one thing, challenging the official narrative of 9/11, and for another thing, There were more that they said, with Sandy Hook and other things. The other thing was something called Pizzagate. Pizzagate, in a brief way, was simply some conservative or independent broadcasters looked at some of the connections of a very prominent donor to Democrats, a friend of Mr. Bill Clinton and all, who also was connected with continual sexual relations with minors, 14 years old, 15 years old. Now that seemed like that too, the mainstream media didn't want. That's totally, if anyone ever questioned 9/11, or if anyone ever connected, Pizzagate, meaning do the Democrats, some of them, sadly, like any Republicans, anybody else, they said, how dare anybody even associate the Democratic Party or Mr. Clinton with some other person who supposedly has sex with all these minors. Now that's what the mainstream media wanted you to never hear. I watched a very liberal news show the other night on my Roku system, Demand News, on demand. Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. And look, you say, John, you're a conservative. Look, no conservative would be able to watch Democracy Now! In the sense they'd get very upset. I watch it because, look, I hear all views. You know what one of the top stories was last night or the night before? A top Democratic person associated with Bill Clinton just pled guilty again, I think it's in Florida, and I believe his name is Epstein, to continual sexual assaults of children. Now, there were a few mainstream sites that you might have seen without telling you that was the exact Pizzagate part of it. Meaning, a liberal news organization, and Democracy Now! Also had clips of the young children that this man sexually assaulted throughout history. He's very rich, and he made various trips to places where this was engaged in, and Mr. Clinton at one time was associated with making trips with this man where these things occurred. So in reality, a lot of that was true. Sadly, a lot of that was true. And it was not only something that some in the media did not want you to know, but they also wanted to shut down any independent news organizations or independent broadcasters who would expose that. The other thing on the 9/11, this recently in the last month, because of simple questions about what's called the collapse of Tower 7, which is a video, if you Google collapse of, that'll come up. A lot of people, engineers and others, simply said, it sure looks like there might have been explosives in the collapse of Tower 7. And then people, independent people, over these last 15 years or so, then they discovered various possible explosives. You had testimonies from firefighters on that day that said that they saw steel in a liquid form melting, which means the heat had to be real high. And then some of the chemicals that seemed to, thermite, I think it was. So just recently, there was another opening of an investigation into simply some of the things, not that you're a big conspiracy theorist, but if you Google collapse of Tower 7, it certainly looks like that was a professional demolition. What does that mean, John? Does it mean there's whole types of conspiracies and planes didn't? No, planes crashed that day. We're not talking necessarily on this. This Tower 7 was another one of the buildings in the World Trade Center. Okay? Now, it seems as if that's something that maybe the official government report is not fully showing everything. Once again, the mainstream media didn't want anybody, if you will, to speak on that. That was another thing that they said. So what you have at this stage where we're at is the media is indeed a fake media, meaning they would purposely cover up for people that were associated with the sex crimes against the kids. They would cover that up because it's not part of their narrative. The most recent things would be the situation in Syria and Russia, which I talked about a lot. This last few weeks, maybe a few days ago, China. This came on some mainstream, like European, British outlets, and I saw none of this. But the president, if you will, or the leader of China, forget, Xiaoping, but he basically told his military to prepare for war with the United States. And it has to do with Taiwan, the two-nation policy that the U.S. has had between China and Taiwan, and China believes Taiwan is like rebelling. Let me finish this. Now, this is, let's see if that's going to finish. Oh, a video title. Okay, that's what I meant. All right, so there are serious issues dealing with China and Russia and Syria. Now, our involvement in Syria was, we were going to be there to fight ISIS, the terrorist group known as ISIS, all right? Al-Qaeda, ISIS, whatever, the different names people use. And then Russia is a backer of Bashar Assad, the leader president of Syria. And supposedly, over these last few years, we were all fighting together. But there are other things at play in Syria. So our troops there, just like the other Iraq and other places, Afghanistan, I myself have never been a supporter of having our men and women in these other foreign countries, boots on the ground, maybe to help a democracy or to stay. I've never been in favor of any of that. Now, I do not like any of the reports of oppression against people, Syria, wherever it is, Iraq, Afghanistan, no matter. And if people are committing what we refer to as genocide, and that there's a leader of a country that's just wiping out whole groups of people because their ethnicity or religious belief, we should intervene if there's really serious humanitarian crisis, genocide type things. But in Syria, for the most part, Russia, for their own reasons, wants Syria to not collapse, and that's why Vladimir Putin is like the main, supporter of Bashar Assad. And the last few years, and his involvement with Turkey and various things over there. But Russia just simply felt if Syria totally collapsed and did give in to ISIS or terrorist groups, then it would be, they don't want that to happen. They don't want that to happen because it just would not be good for that part of the world. That's really why. But now there are people in our government and now in our media that basically feel our troops should stay there, not only because ISIS, is pretty much been fought back, but now we have to prevent Russia, Putin, from supporting an ally. And granted, he's done some bad things, Bashar Assad. But wait a minute. So many in the media had the view that I had, and others had, that we really should not have our troops in all of these places for long periods of time. Mr. Obama had to deal with the whole thing in Syria as well. So then when Trump the other day, whether you agree or not, when he said, look, we're going to get our people out of Syria, this is how the irresponsibility of the fake news comes in. Then right away they said, he's doing the bidding of Putin, Russia. So then now you have many in the irresponsible fake news that said, no, we need to keep all of our troops there. Why? To fight it? No, we just don't want to do the bidding of Putin. So now you have an irresponsible media that is unable to break away from their addiction, even involving in the things that are happening worldwide. My personal opinion is I don't think our troops should have been long-term in any of these places. Even the whole Iraq debacle, I was against. But I shared these few things to let you see. It's not many in the CNN crowd and others, they contacted social media outlets, they contacted and they said, stop this voice, stop this voice, stop this voice. But even on serious things that should be questioned. So they have basically, they are not trustworthy at all. They are not trustworthy at all. And the media organizations right now in the United States, everything, even something serious like the few things I mentioned, on this short 20, how long that took, they're unable to really discern and to report truth. They should have been more than willing to say there are some questions about. You had a top Democratic rich man, white man, associated again with the Democratic Party. And maybe about 8 months ago, he picked up black men out in California for sex and drugs and things. And sadly, some of these black people, and it's black people though too, I'll give you the cases of right now, and they struggle with drug addiction. And so, in this case, it's a white Democrat person who has his attraction for sexual relations with black men. And these black men are struggling with addiction, and like women will prostitute themselves, sadly, this guy takes advantage of black men. And about 8 months ago or so, one of them died of an overdose in this white Democrat's, rich Democrat connected his apartment. Okay, very sad. And he got away with it. And the media will report somewhat on it, but they would prefer you not to know that that was a really bad crime. And 2 days ago, another black man from the streets of California was picked up by this white Democrat. Died again. Now, if that was anybody, a Trump or the media is unable and unwilling. Before I turn this video on, just caught a few minutes of local talk radio, but they played clips from Mr. Schumer where he said you needed immigrants, video clips of him a few years ago that basically said illegal immigrants are not just immigrants seeking a better life. We have to treat them as criminals, and clips and clips and clips of basically what you would have heard from maybe the other side of the aisle. And of course, for political reasons, he totally, whatever. So the media, mainstream media, really won't tell you that. And I heard clips of Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi. We need a wall, or we need boundaries in countries. Clips from Obama. I've heard it a lot over the last few years. But Mr. Obama is saying we cannot have illegal immigrants entering this country, breaking our system. We must stop them at all costs. They must be stopped. Illegal immigrants, they're taking jobs away. They're illegal. They're not just people seeking. Okay, clips and clips. It makes no difference. The mainstream media, and the other day I thought if you had Chuck Schumer or somebody say, I don't know what, 2 and 2 is 4. And then if you had maybe Mr. Trump or somebody else later that day saying 2 and 2 is 4. Now maybe the next day you'd have Mr. Schumer saying, I never said 2 and 2 is 4. And you say, wait a minute, we'll show you the clip. The mainstream media would say, oh, there's an explanation. When I said it, I meant this. They are totally unable in serious issues. No mainstream media site should have, and they put this out as serious news in this last 2 weeks, that Mr. Trump is trying to get our men out of Syria because he's doing the bidding of Putin. No, it's sons and daughters that join the military, that they want to serve their country, and they really shouldn't be on the ground there. And that really should be the liberal view. but they're not concerned that they hold to their views, not because they believe in their views. They hold to them because they're in a fight and they want to win the game. So, no, Mr. Trump is not doing the bidding of Putin. Our people shouldn't be there. Plain and simple. You've demonized everything Russia. Well, but then Putin would be more happy if Syria remained stable. Well, of course he would. Would we be more happy if Mexico remained stable because it's right on our border? Would we be more happy if Canada didn't have a complete revolution and the Bolsheviks took over? Of course we would. So why do you think Mr. Putin wants Syria to not collapse into the hand of ISIS? Because he wants it stable. And you have people in the American mainstream media saying that's the bidding of Putin. There, even in serious issues, like some I mentioned on this short clip, and you have mainstream news organizations in this country who have tried to get voices that would just speak about some of the things you heard me speak about. Get them off the air. You've had mainstream voices say, Pizzagate. Anybody who thinks that a top Democrat hired 2 black prostitutes who were men and drug addicts, and they both died in his apartment in California because they're overdosing and they don't want you to see that. Well, what about the plight of the poor black male prostitutes who this white Democrat was taking advantage of? They don't want you to know it. They don't want you to see it. They don't care truly for the immigrant. They don't care for the minority. It's a game they play. So I wanted to do that update to let you see that's what you're dealing with. You're not really dealing with media that's trying to expose things. I'm glad that a very liberal news show called Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman out of New York City was willing to say, no, the Pizzagate or whatever, it wasn't a big conspiracy. This man that was connected with Mr. Clinton had repeated and pled guilty. And he had an affection to the 14-year-old girls that were all victims, connected with the Democrats. And they made trips, and the mainstream media did not want you to ever know that. And you say, but they're concerned of, no, they're not. Whether it's Anderson Cooper getting drunk on New Year's Eve, or I don't care who, Joe Scarborough, who thinks that his cause in life, MSNBC, his cause in life is daily. One person, Mr. Trump, one person is the enemy of humanity, and that if we spend all of our waking hours, what a waste of time. You could have focused, my true liberal friends, pick a few issues that maybe you could have some effect on. Boko Haram in Africa again, sadly. No, you're fixated by hate. And you've cloaked it in, this is a righteous cause we're in to get this one man. And it causes Mr. Schumer and everybody else to just be absolute liars. I mean, I could show you clip after clip after clip. Border security. If people say, we don't want to put a barrier, a wall, or whatever it is, but some of these same people will say night after night, but we want border security. But we want to put the money in other things which would be more effective, which also means more border guards and more guns. Now, any analysis will tell you, I have many friends who have had lifestyles of crime. If you, Mr. Schumer and Ms. Pelosi and everybody else, who they cannot speak truth to you ever, if you're advocating, let's pump more money into armed men, which would mean there would be more one-on-one confrontations, with our Border Patrol, who are good people, and with illegal immigrants, which many are good. But the more one-on-one contact like that would lead to more deaths, sadly. Because you have many cases where maybe somebody threw a rock from the other side, the Rio Grande, I live very close to the border, and then a Border Patrol agent is going to respond. So any honest analysis would tell you that the position of Miss Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, meaning we'll put $5 billion or whatever, but no wall, but more agents and more guns, that's actually contrary to their view, would lead to more deaths. Now, will a wall stop everything? I'm not really for a wall, but it would prevent more one-on-one confrontations. If you have a bank or a Circle K or something, and people on the street know, man, that one, they leave the door open in the back room. Okay, it invites maybe someone struggling with addiction to go into that particular establishment and rob it. And if there's a manager in there and he's got the gun, on both sides, it's more violent to have unprotected things. If you knew the doors were unlocked or there was no fence around something that people wanted to get in there, it invites more to do it. So just a simple, honest analysis would say, if you're against barriers and borders and you say we want to have an open system, if that's the view that a liberal person would hold, then the answer wouldn't be, oh yes, we want, because I hear Mr. Schumer, Pelosi, and others say, we want border security, just not that way. Which way? You want more guns? Yes, that's what they'll tell you. We want more guns and more border patrol, because we want to put the funds more into, which is worse, which is more dangerous. So hold the true liberal view if you want to go that route and say we really don't believe that we should have this type of, immigration. We would let everybody in. If that's the true liberal view, some hold to that view. But you will never get an analysis because the media, an honest one, because the media has become a huge game in this country. I have not bought the Caller Times in a couple of weeks, and I do check the media online. But I recognize that people are trending away. I gave you just some facts on this little talk. Not that everything's 100%. And there are media people in the mainstream media that would silence even real questions that people on both sides of the aisle would have about various things that are important to us. They don't want that out. They are caught up in a game. They would say to you, 2 and 2 is 4, which it is. And then if the opposing party said the same thing the very same day, the next day they'd say, we never said it. And the media would cover up for that. You'd think that the media in these interviews the last few days would ask the opposing party, but you used to be for a protective barrier. You used to make it. It's just the game that they're playing with you. And journalism is really dead in the country. And they're aggressive to silence other voices. The honest things that people should be aware of are both sides of these issues. I'm very pro-immigrant. But I also recognize all the arguments. And if you're going to have an honest argument, you will not find old statements from me 5 years ago that say these immigrants are criminals. But you have top leading Democrats who you can find those statements. The same top leading Democrats whose cause now is the exact opposite of the words they spoke. So, and I see them. There's a whole world of issues that we can be engaged in. And if we become informed as people, even as Christians, we could try to engage in them in an honest and right way. You say, John, whenever you bring up questions about the collapse of Tower 7, that could put you in the category where others would say you're a conspiracy. Look, if you actually have questions about things, and you look over time and say, look, some of those things are questionable, you should be able to raise the questions honestly without CNN or any other organization contacting Twitter, Facebook, and everybody else and say, take them off. Because they're aggressively trying to prevent you from knowing truth. That's your mainstream media. On some of the things you heard me talk about on this 30 minutes now. So it's not only that they're unable, they want to stop other voices who want to tell you something that's true. Okay? So this is the one update. It won't, for the social media benefit and all the video things I do and all this, it's frustrating at times. Facebook, I like it. And you can read things as you scroll. What's the best media thing? But media-wise, I tried to develop a system to go back on all of my videos. You have video sites, you have websites, you have text sites. Facebook is not real functional if you're going to look at the history of your videos by date. People that post a lot, that you need that function. Most cloud sites have a search function, and if you put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos, YouTube, whatever, you just search for your video, made January 2015 or whatever, the title pops up, and then you share. Facebook is yet to develop that function. You can go back on all my videos or all your videos, and then you can click the video, say I want to share it to the other side, but it's not too functional for that. And I learned that as I'm trying these things. But when you Google this, they'll say like Facebook, and I'm grateful for Facebook, and I'm grateful for YouTube, and we'll use them as much as we can. But that's why people are going to these other things, all right? For that very purpose. That sometimes if you speak the truth on an issue, the media of this country will actually launch a campaign to get you kicked off of social media. That happened with the Alex Jones. I don't agree with Alex Jones on everything. But like I said, two of the main things that the mainstream media campaigned to get his voice silenced was the questions about the 9/11, which there are, they didn't like that, and the Pizzagate. They didn't like the fact that any media would tell you, look, there's a top Democrat guy, and he's just got convicted again of having sex with kids. He was friends with Clinton. He took a lot of trips with Clinton. The mainstream media not only did not report it, they wanted to silence anybody on the air that told you that. You see? They're not only irresponsible in the things they're doing, but they're actively trying to silence others who would tell you the truth. Okay? That's what you have. All right. Bless everybody, and I'll post this right now.